Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. I'm very pleased to see everybody here tonight. Eddie, can we have apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I've received apologies from Councillors Noble, Lewis, Tedder and Dan Adams. Councillor Hawkins is subbing for Councillor Lewis, and Councillor Tapper, who is online, is substituting for Councillor Noble.
Thank you. So item 2 is my official announcements, and welcome to the guest. So to the guests, I'd like to welcome Gemma. Gemma is the local, Gemma Taylor that is the local commander and inspector for this area. I'm very pleased to have you with us, Gemma. Sorry, I'm looking the wrong way. Very welcome to have you here, Gemma. And we also have Accent are going to be there online. And we also have the Bisley Village Hall trustee, which is Russ Hayes. Thank you very much for coming along as well. Pleased to have you here tonight, Russ. So I think it's a very interesting agenda that we have here tonight. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay.
It's also Councillor White's doing the presentation.
Oh, sorry, Valerie. I missed you. I was trying. I was trying to speak into the microphone. Sorry. We're very pleased to have Councillor Valerie White here tonight. She is the panel member for the police. So pleased to hear what you're going to say in your presentation, Valerie. Thank you. Okay, item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. To confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of March 2022. You're in agreement with that, the minutes? Thank you. Okay, item 4. Declarations of interest. Members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests and non-pecuniary interests that they may have with respect to matters which are to be considered at this meeting. Members who consider that they may have an interest are invited to consult the monitoring officer or the democratic services officer prior to the meeting. Are there any interests? No? Thank you. Item 5, we're to receive a presentation from Accent PLS, and we have Julie, we took on. Thank you for being here, Julie. Can I just say from the beginning, we do hope, and it's very good that you're coming and you're online for these meetings every time now, but we really would like to see one of you in person, hopefully for the next meeting within the chamber. I think members would appreciate that as well, Julie, if one of you could come. But very pleased to have you tonight. We have got all your presentation. So if you would like to just go straight into your presentation.
Yeah, please. Would you like me to share my screen, or has everybody got a copy of it? What would be best?
Yeah, share screen.
You can share the screen.
Yes, thank you. So what we'd like to do is to have your presentation and then take about 10 minutes questions from members. Members would have had the email from questions in between. So I think that's what we will be doing. So thank you very much.
Okay. No problem. And first of all, apologies for not being there in person. I had intended to come in person tonight, but unfortunately my husband's away and I have got a 5-year-old and I didn't have any other options. So apologies for that. I would have liked to have come, but I am coming in person to meet with councillors on the 20th of June in the evening. I understand from Nick Stevens that invitation's been opened up to all members to attend that meeting. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So I'll keep tonight's briefing quite brief, but again open up to questions at the end, as you said. So I'm Julie Whittick. I'm the Executive Director of Assets and Sustainability for Accent Group. I started on the 24th of January, and I just come to the last meeting and give a brief update then of what was happening. So I'm pleased to be here again. Thank you very much. Can you see my presentation? You can see, if somebody can nod at me, I can see. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Okay, so just to give you a bit of a general update, first of all, we have had some restructuring of the Accent leadership team, and some of you will be aware of that because we have written out to the to Surrey Heath and to the councillors. But those of you will know that Rob Mills did leave the organisation at the beginning of May, and we are doing, and there are some temporary, there's a temporary director in place at the moment, which is Sean Finnegan. Sean's only temporary in terms of covering the South region because he's worked for Accent for about 20 years, I think, and he's an experienced customer experience director who covers our North region at the moment. So he's covering the South as well. And we've also got a very experienced customer experience manager or housing manager also covering from our Yorkshire region, and that's John Place. So I think that those details of those contacts did go to everybody, but I just wanted to confirm that that was the case. And we have got a recruitment process underway at the moment. So Claire Stone, who's our Executive Director of Customer Experience, and she looks after all of the housing management function group. She's currently recruiting for a replacement. It's not an identical replacement to Rob's role, but it is another customer experience director that will cover our South and East regions. So that is underway. So hopefully next time we meet, the next time that one of us comes to this meeting, we might be able to update you on that. But just to say that we are very committed, and I said this last time, we've got an interim in at the moment looking after the demobilisation of the contract. So we've invested in resource in this region because we understand that we have a way to go in terms of improving our services, and we're really committed to doing that. So just to say that we are putting senior people in this region to help improve services. We have got a new Director of Property Services, and I did advise of this, that we were going to be recruiting to this post last time. And again, we have written out with these details, but I just wanted to confirm that. So Edith Shah has joined the organisation, and she's our Director of Property Services, and she's looking after all of our responsive and planned maintenance. She's got 25 years experience and is a technical expert in all things repairs. So we're really, really pleased to have Edith on board working for us, and she's hit the ground running and I know is already making an impact. That being said, recruitment is still a challenge for us, and I don't know whether you're experiencing the same, but we have been out to advert a few times for some surveying staff in the region, and we're struggling to recruit there at the moment. So we're just looking to make sure that our salary levels are correct, and looking at our offer really in this region to make sure that we can recruit the best people. So that's a challenge for us. Okay, so moving on to the new contract arrangements. I think when I came last time, I advised that probably earlier than had got into the public domain, but that Axis wouldn't be bidding for the tender going forward. They were our main contractor. And we did go out and do a tender process, and I'm pleased to say that Ian Williams won that tender. The Axis contract ended on the 30th of May, and Ian Williams took over from that date. So last week, basically, it was all changed. As I said, we have got a senior contracts manager in place who came to work with us sort of as soon as we decided. And David Guy has been working with us ever since to make sure that there's a smooth transition of the services. So I don't know whether any of you have come across David, but he's our lead down there in Surrey Heath, and has been working really closely with Axis and Ian Williams. We are in a transition period. We are working through an awful lot of, as when you end a contract, they've been working with us for a few years now, and there's lots of things to iron out. We have to go through all the outstanding repairs that are left, all the, everything that's been started and not finished. And there's quite a lot of work to do to end, although the contract's ended, to actually, finish it off and make sure there's a smooth transition. And when Axis finished the contract last week, there was about 1,500 open orders on our system from Axis. So that was the position last week. So I wanted to update you on that. I just put a picture of the Ian Williams vans on there because those were the vans that arrived in the region. So hopefully you'll see our jointly branded vans out and about on the on our estates, which I think is a positive thing. So we haven't had that joint branding before, and it's something that I'm really keen on because I want our customers to know that when our contractors turn up, they're working on behalf of us, and that's really important. So just to give you a bit of an update, oh, sorry, I went one too many. Ian Williams picked up the work last week. They are dealing with most of the trades now. So, and just to kind of explain how this will work, all new repairs that are reported will just be dealt with now in the normal way. So we have routine repairs, emergency and urgent repairs, and those, you know, those don't form part of the backlog, as it were. So those sort of outstanding repairs, we will just carry on with the demand that comes in and deal with those in a normal way. And hopefully our customers will see that those are dealt with, you know, quickly and within our published timescales. In terms of the backlog, 1,500 outstanding or open orders. We're not sure yet. We're going through a line-by-line exercise at the moment. Some of those will have been done and just not completed on the system. So those are the sorts of things that we're working through at the moment. But of the ones that are outstanding that haven't been complete, those are being prioritised to make sure we tackle the most urgent first. Urgent and emergency repairs have been done anyway. These are more of the routine things that have been left, but we will tackle we will tackle them on a priority basis. And we are using some subcontractors to help us to clear those backlogs. So things like groundworks, plastering, some of the bigger jobs, we're going to be assigning to some other contractors to help us clear that backlog. Because the problem with responsive repair services, once you get behind with it, it's really difficult to catch up because demand doesn't stop. You know, the demand keeps going. So unless you throw additional resource in, you won't catch up really. So that's what we're doing. We're getting additional resource. Ian Williams are pulling in their subcontractors. Ian Williams have got a presence in the area. So they've got a contract that they run out of their Guildford unit. So they've got really good connections in the area in terms of other contractors that they can call upon to help. So that's really positive for us. We are targeting our customer communications for the people that have got outstanding repairs to make sure that we're very clear. And once we've done this exercise, this line-by-line exercise of all the outstanding repairs that we're clear are outstanding and they haven't had a visit, we will be contacting those customers directly to advise them of when their repair will be done and give them an idea. And we need to make sure that our communication channels are really good and open, and we're trying to get better at that, because I know that hasn't been great. And I've written out to everybody. We've got stuff on our website and we're really trying to keep people informed of where we are. We understand that our service hasn't been up to scratch, and that's why we've made these changes, and we think it's really positive. And having a new contractor on board for us, Ian Williams already work in 3 of our other regions, so they're now in 4 out of 5 of our regions. They're really committed to Accent Group, and they're doing a great job for our other customers, and we know that they'll do a great job here as well. So that's, you know, we're definitely confident that things will improve. Planned works will continue as normal. We're doing kitchens, bathrooms, fire doors, windows. Those are ongoing, and work has started there. But in terms of our responsive service and our normal repair service, it will take 6 months to get back to normal. And that's, you know, that's a very honest view from me. And I don't want to pretend that it's going to be any different to that, because it will take time to clear this and to actually make sure that we've ironed out everything that's been outstanding and all the things that haven't worked quite as we would have liked them to. And I think that it will take 6 months to sort that out. And that's not to say people necessarily wait that long, but for very non-urgent jobs, fencing is a particular issue for us in this region in terms of getting contractors, materials and all the rest of it. It is going to take some time to iron all of that out and get that all sorted. We are going to have some customer engagement events in the summer, and Ian Williams are really keen to engage with the community and do some stuff. And I know Nick Stevens and I have talked about doing things together so that we work alongside Surrey Heath and show a united front in lots of ways, because I know we're your biggest provider here in terms of social housing, and we're really keen that we do things together. And I know there've been some issues around housing options and other things, and I think that we can do a lot of things together where people confuse who's responsible for what. And, by working together and going out in partnership and doing some community events, I think that will be a really positive way forward. And I know it's something that Nick and I have talked about and that we're really keen to progress. Just making sure that I haven't missed anything in terms of an update. I would have liked to have been able to come and given you a really clear position on, by this date we'll have done this, by this date we'll have done this. But actually, when contracts end, it's very, very difficult to plan or predict how it's going to end. So although Axis, we've been working very closely with them, we've been meeting them every day to talk about the outstanding repairs. They were very keen to leave it as in a good state as they could. The reality is that when contracts end, staff move on, they go to find other jobs because they don't know what the future is going to look like. And in the end, they had very few operatives that were able to work on our contract, which meant that really we were only able to cover emergency and urgent repairs. Ian Williams picked up our empty property repairs earlier than expected. So we did take some work off Axis and got that covered elsewhere. But it was, we couldn't see what the full picture was until the very end, really, until everything had, everyone had down tools and we were able to start looking at, okay, what actually is outstanding now? And that's going to take us a few weeks to get through. So that's the latest update. I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can see people and answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you very much, Julie, for your update.
Okay.
We look forward to seeing you fully here. I just make 6th of September, so I think, as you mentioned, it's going to take a while to get caught up. But by that time, I think we should be on the road to recover
Absolutely.
Of some of this. Yes.
We're definitely on the road already, but yeah, I think that we'll have shown even more progress by September. So the 6th of September is the next meeting. I'll write that down.
6th of September.
Lovely, thank you.
I'll take questions. And as I mentioned at the beginning, members, I'll take questions for Julie now, but you have got that email address for any, personal things outside of this meeting.
Yes.
Puldeech.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. So disappointing that we are in this position still after, gosh, I can't remember when it was that we first asked Accent to present to this committee every session. It was a good couple of years ago, probably a year before COVID even. There did seem to be some progress, and I'd love to give you a really hard time now over that, but obviously we've had COVID. I have clients in my professional capacity that are struggling to recruit people, I think, and that's across all sectors, not just yours. I was talking to a beautician, funnily enough, in the town centre this morning, who said that she can't recruit anyone. So I can't give you a hard time over that, but there's a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight. So one is you mentioned planned maintenance.
Yes.
Interestingly, across a couple of estates, I've had inquiries from residents recently where they're saying that the grounds are not being maintained, hedges not cut, grass not being cut, weeding not being done, that type of thing. Okay. I think it's important those types of things are taken care of quickly. Yeah. Because if estates are well maintained, then the residents that live on those estates tend to look after them. So, so if you can get on top of that, that would be great. I do have a question in terms of your CRM or your customer relationship management tools. Is that joint with Ian Williams? so that they can see the log notes on each inquiry from residents and so on. So that's the first question. Still issues with the wrong tradesman being assigned to particular jobs. So I don't know, a plumber might turn up for a joinery job or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that a lot, and that just is so frustrating for residents. I mean, how difficult can that be?
Yeah.
So I'd like you to address that to the committee, please. Mould is still a huge issue in a lot of properties. It seems to me as though that whatever it is that you're doing to address the mould is not enough, and that there needs to be proper damp-proof. I'm not an expert in these things, but whatever the most stringent measure is that you can achieve with that, I think that's what you need to do. And there's some inherent problems with properties across the patch. You said in your presentation that you're pleased that Ian Williams was appointed. I'd be interested to know why you're pleased that Ian Williams was appointed. What was it that you saw in Ian Williams as opposed to some of the other people? Why is it that they're going to do a good job? And perhaps you could highlight that for me. And I appreciate your honesty on the 6 months. I hope when we come back in 6 months' time that a major dent has been made into that backlog, if not cleared completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, the estate services grounds maintenance, we have got a review ongoing at the moment. And Sean Finnegan, who I mentioned earlier, he's leading that review. We're aware that those services aren't where we would like them to be. And one of the things that's definitely, I think, has been introduced in Surrey Heath is what we call green inspectors. So residents that will help us to manage those contracts and make sure that we stay on top of them because they're our eyes and ears on the ground. So just to give you some assurance, we are looking at that. We're looking at the contracts. And I think there is a plan that those services may well come under my directorate going forward in the next quarter so that we can manage those contracts a bit tighter and have a more uniformed approach to, because it is about contract management and making sure that our suppliers are delivering as they should be. So that is under review at the moment. In my update, which I'm kicking myself now because you're talking to me about wrong trades and sending. I had one recently. We sent an electrician to fix a toilet, and I was thinking that's probably not the right thing. Some of them are multi-trade, but one of the things that we are doing at Accent Group is from the 1st of October. We are launching a technical contact centre. So at the moment, as with many organisations, and these things do go in cycles, we've got a contact centre that deals with everything, all inquiries, and it's really about a one-stop shop really service. And what we've really sort of concluded is that actually you get a much better repair service if you've got technical trained staff that just deal with repairs all the time, and that they're actually, well, the new contact centre that we're going to have is going to be a physical contact centre, so not virtual. So they're going to co-locate with our contractors. They're going to have duty surveyors on call for them so that they've got that technical help always to help them if they've got an issue diagnosing repairs. The other thing that we're doing is we are getting some new software to introduce a diagnostic tool, which we haven't got at the moment. And we've also changed our contracts to schedule of rates, which means that it will be much easier for people to identify what the job is, and the trade will go with the job. So the coding system will change. So we are launching that technical hub from the 1st of October. What we're doing is we're actually recruiting now. So our plan is to recruit people in and give them an intensive 4-week training program before they're allowed to sort of let loose on the phones to take repairs. So I think that's a really positive move for Accent, because we're investing in that that very first part of the service, because when it goes wrong at the beginning, it just goes wrong at the end. You know, it really does. It's so important to get it right at the beginning, and sending the right tradesperson is really important. Yes, Ian Williams will be able to look at our systems and our system notes. We will have full interaction. It will be that's key, that they see that. And you know what's also key is when we train our contact centre staff and our customer advisors is that they they know what they're looking for. They're looking at the history to see who's been sent before. Is it a recall? Is it a new job? You know, what's the history, and just taking the time out to look at those things. And I think we need to improve on that, which will help us to get it right first time, which is really the dream, isn't it? Because that's the most efficient way of delivering services. In terms of mould and damp, I will have a look at how many mould and damp cases we've got. I think, again, you know, we are really struggling to recruit technical people into our region here, and we've been out to advert now 3 times. So we're going to have to look at doing something different, and we do need to get on top of any cases of damp and mould and make sure that we're accurately diagnosing them and dealing with them, so that people aren't, you know, struggling to resolve those issues, because sometimes it's very simple and other times it's more structural and needs something more, but we need to get on top of it. So I will highlight that with Edith and make sure that she's looking at what we've got in this region in terms of outstanding cases of damp and mould. In terms of why Ian Williams, like I say, they do work in 4 of our other regions. We had some issues in our northwest region with a contractor that it went terribly wrong. There was a huge backlog of repairs. We exited them in October. They had hundreds and hundreds of outstanding jobs. I think it was about 900 at the time. And I'm pleased to say that 2 months ago, that was down to 15 or 20. So that's just to give some assurance in terms of Ian Williams picked that up, you know, got cracking and were able to clear that backlog. They also have picked up a contract in our East region. Again, that was we had to end a contract there where it hadn't gone well at all. And again, they're working through that at the moment. They picked that up in December. So they've done a really good job in terms of catching up with the backlog. It's not quite clear, but they've almost done it. And they're doing a really good job for us. They did a really good tender. We like their values and the way they work. We like the way they invest in their staff. They've got a training academy. They're very committed to giving something back. They do a lot for charity. They're committed to the social housing sector. This is what they do. They've got some cracking reference sites. Years ago, I worked with them at BPHA, so I know them. Their MD has been there a long time. They've got very long-serving staff, which I think says a lot, because I think they invest in their people. They're very, very keen on direct delivery. They do have to subcontract some work because that's a very efficient way of delivering, but they're also really, really keen on growing their own apprenticeships. And so on the whole, the quality that they offer us, as well as good value for money, and it's not all about cost, because the weighting that we put on is actually more about quality than cost, for us, provided what we thought would be really positive for our customers and delivering. So that's why Ian Williams. So have I answered all of your questions?
You have. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
No problem.
Any other members? Any questions? Did you? Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Chair. I firstly would just like to ask, when you have a turnover of tenants on a property, is that process, the preparation of the property for the new tenant, handled by Ian Williams, or is it handled in-house?
So the process should be, that a surveyor would inspect that property, hopefully prior to the person moving out, but that's not always possible. But certainly they should go out and spec that property to decide what work needs doing, and then it would be our contractor that does it. At the moment, because Axis weren't delivering as quickly as we needed them to on our void properties, our empty properties, Ian Williams did step in about 2 months ago to help us out, and some of that work has been subcontracted and some of it's with Ian Williams. But yes, we outsource that work. We don't have an in-house maintenance team at all. So we have surveyors that would do the specs and then would post-inspect to make sure that the work was up to standard. But the actual physical repairing of that property and bringing it up to the Accent standard would be done by one of our contractors.
Okay, thank you very much for confirming that. The reason I ask is I'm actually a council appointed trustee to Friendly Fuel Allotments, who you probably are well aware of. And you'll also be aware, of course, that quite frequently your tenants are also our applicants for grants to cover things that they need in their new home. That they can't afford to pay for themselves. One of the things that have been a bugbear in the past, which I know we've discussed with you, is the issue of carpets. Now, my understanding is we reached an agreement with you that there wouldn't be an automatic pulling up of carpets and throwing away, but that the state of the carpets would be inspected. And that where they could be reused, they would be subject to a professional clean in preparation for the new tenant. I was just wanted to make sure that information has got through to Ian Williams to make sure that they are aware that we do have this arrangement, that carpets will not be thrown out wholesale, but they will be judged for their continued usefulness and where possible will be reused rather than replaced.
We are reviewing our void specification at the moment. I agree with you. There's two schools of thought here, to be honest with you, on leaving carpets. There's some that absolutely disagree with it and want to lift every carpet up because they want to check floorboards and health and safety. And we have been stung in those cases before where there've been issues or with needles and those sorts of things. So I think where we're absolutely sure that the carpet is good and the flooring underneath it is good and there's no health and safety issues, then we wouldn't rip up perfectly good carpets, but we would have to be absolutely sure. In my experience, it's not often people leave perfectly good carpets, but what I would really like, if I'm honest, is when we do redo a void property, I would like to put new flooring into every property to give everybody an opportunity. That would be my ideal, and it would be hardy flooring that you could either put a rug over or you could mop, or something on the ground floor that people could just move in and use. And that's something that I would really like to build into our spec, but we're looking at it, we're reviewing it at the moment and the costs.
Thank you.
Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've got 3 points I just wanted to quickly raise. And the first one is regarding the tenants themselves, because obviously they're the ones who are the people paying for it. It doesn't matter if they're paying for it directly or if it's paid by benefits, it's still by them paying. And I just want to observe that in some of these cases, they've waited and waited and waited and waited. And if it was that they hadn't been paying their rents, action would be taken. If it was antisocial behaviour, action would be taken, and quite rightly as well. But what recourse do they have where your side of the bargain is not being fulfilled in terms of the lengthy delays that they're having to put up with for repairs? Now, I do appreciate that you are new, it's not your fault, and you're coming in and trying to deal with the situation. But nonetheless, from a tenant point of view, that is all irrelevant. Accent are their landlord. They have been their landlord for many years. Internal contracts and staff is of no interest to them at all. The landlord is still the same. And therefore, will they be getting any compensation, those who have had to wait, in some cases, for many months? The second point is just in regard to mould, which Councillor Deech raised. And I would encourage you to look at the salary levels for key staff, because let's be blunt, a few £1,000s extra for key staff in order to recruit people is fractional compared with the amount of money that you'd need to spend in terms of mould and things like that if it's not addressed properly. So it's definitely a saving. I know it might cause differentials in the organisation, but to be honest, we're in the world where we are. I used to be a housing officer myself, and the reality of the world is where we are. So it would just save so much money to get in the key staff now. And I would actively encourage that. And the final point is not necessarily one for you, but it's one for your seniors. Because we have now had 2 contracts which have gone down exactly the same route. This is not the first time. I remember this happening with a previous contract in Surrey Heath, where we were told pretty much the same as you've told us. And you've also disclosed to us that pretty much the same has happened in other regions. And that demonstrates to me a really serious problem in terms of contract management in Axon. I appreciate that's not your, that's not for you, that's for senior officers, but something's gone pretty badly wrong in my view. If contract after contract has to be cancelled, in terms of whether it's a specification, whether people are putting in ridiculous figures, but the contracts themselves are clearly wrong. And they've clearly been wrong in many cases. The odd 1 or 2 will always be an issue, but there seems to be a pattern here of things going wrong across the country in terms of this area. So I accept it's a harder area, but I think if you don't mind passing back, because I accept it's not you, that this is something which we are picking up as councillors. I suspect councillors across the country are thinking the same, and that perhaps they need to be looking at carefully at a central level as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I think for your last point, I think they've recognised it, and that's why I'm here, and that they've separated this area of the business out and invested in it, which I think is really positive. You know, I don't want to paint a really bleak picture. It's unfortunate, you know, the 2 contracts that didn't go right in the other 2 regions were the same contractor. So that, you know, that's part and parcel. I will be really candid with you. We haven't had good contracts in place. I changed them almost immediately because they weren't providing the desired outcome. So, and I agree, and I think one of the things that I think I might have said in February was I felt we'd really underinvested in technical staff at Accent Group, and I think for all the right reasons at the time, and I've had this conversation with Councillor Garrett and Nick Stevens in we kind of went so far down the customer experience and let's recruit for customer customer skills and we've lost something on the way. And it's not that technical people haven't got good customer service skills, you know, because you can have both. So we just kind of went a bit too far the other way. And I can see how it's happened, and we are pulling it back, but we're just in a really difficult market at the moment. We are willing to pay extra. We do have a market supplement for our South and East regions, actually, of about 25%. But we need to revisit again, and I'm completely with you. For me, I would, you know, HR have got their view, which is, oh, you know, well, if you do it for them, you have to do it for everyone else. I'm like, no, you don't. You if you can't recruit in an area, you have to do the right thing in that area, and so we will do that. And I've actually got a specialist recruitment agency on board who I'm meeting with next week, and they're going to help us out. So I think that's good. In terms of compensation for tenants, what I would say is where we don't turn up for an appointment and someone's taken a day off, we do have published kind of compensation policy, and we do offer a payment. I agree with you. Whether the tenants pay the rent directly or not, we have a contract with them, we have an obligation. And part of the problem at Accent Group is that we've had a massive scope creep. So we've got into this habit of, and this is part of the in the South it was an open book contract, but in the other regions it was a price per property contract, which meant that it was an all-inclusive. So we just did everything, and actually we've been doing a lot of things that we're not responsible for, and that's not given us a very good chance of delivering what we should be doing. So I think that's been part of the problem as well. We've had a bit of scope creep for all the right reasons. Again, you know, it's just created the wrong outcome, really. I'm not going to get into, yes, we're going to pay everyone compensation because it's been that bad. I think we're really sorry. We're really trying to put it right now. We're investing in all the right things. I'm absolutely confident, and I know you've heard it all before, but I'm really confident that this will be different this time, for lots of reasons. We've got the right contract in place. I believe we've got the right contractor. We're investing in people that know that know how to manage contracts and can invest in those relationships. So if in 6 months you're not telling me something different, then we'll tackle that then. We will always pay compensation if somebody's taken time off work and we've not turned up or we've done something wrong. We will always say sorry and do the right thing, but we're not going to do a full scale kind of payment. But I do accept what you're saying. And I think what I would say to you as well, and I know you'll appreciate this, we have got limited resources. We're all struggling at the moment in terms of costs going up, and that's the same for our tenants. And we're really committed to making sure that, our tenants don't suffer any more than they have to. So I'll leave it there, but I understand what you're saying and I take your point. And we do need to deliver what it says in our contract. I think that was that all of your points, Councillor Bates? I think, did I cover them all?
You did. It was just one quick follow-up. You mentioned about compensation, and I understand the point you're making, but I just want to be reassured, I suppose, that compensation is offered as a matter of course to residents, where there is, for example, people who are not turning up to things, and it's not something that they therefore have to chase or maybe are not aware of. I'm sure you're aware many of our residents will not necessarily be people who will naturally complain other than on social media, or necessarily know how to claim such compensation. So, we've all heard stories of people not turning up, and maybe that's historic and is going to happen going forward. But just, can we be reassured that people, as a matter of course, where there's somebody not turning up, will get compensated for their time for that happening?
We would compensate if someone lost money because they had to take time off work. We don't charge tenants for not being in when we say we're coming to do repairs. And I think if we go down that road, it's going to be very, very administratively heavy and not beneficial for anybody. So we don't routinely offer it. Things do go wrong sometimes. If somebody has suffered financially because we haven't turned up, then we would compensate them.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I've got two questions now, just following off of that one. Based on the answer in terms of providing compensation for people who've financially lost money, what are the proportion of tenants that do claim? Because if tenants don't claim because the criteria, they don't believe they fit that criteria, I was wondering what the proportion of that is. And also, I just want to ask, as you well know, we've heard Accent come before this committee before and say, we're going to make things better. And I fully believe you, and I know that you've come in and you're saying the right things, Julie, you are. But what do you expect us to do in 6 months if it hasn't changed for the better? What do you expect this committee to say then?
I hope we won't get to that. I genuinely believe that we won't be in that position. I would expect you to be to hold us to account if we're not in a better position and we haven't made improvements. Of course I would. We are really, really doing all of the right things, putting all the right things in place to make this better. We're really committed to our customers in this area. We really are. And, we're developing new housing here. We're absolutely clear that we haven't got it right, and we are doing everything possible to make it right. I don't think that we will, I know that we won't be in this position in 6 months. I'm convinced of it. I'm confident that we're doing all the right things to make it better. And I would expect, if we are in this position, for you to hold us to account. But, and I know you've heard it all before, and all I can do, I can't rewrite history. I can't change what's happened. All I can do is, with my experience and knowing what works and what doesn't work, and by employing the right people and getting a very strong team on board, I can do all the right things to make this better. And we've, I've been here 4 months, about just over 4 months now, and already I've changed all the contracts for the whole country. Axis have gone, a new contractor's in place. We've got new staff in place. We really have been moving quite quickly. I've got the agreement to implement a new technical contact centre from the autumn. We've started recruiting to that already. We are truly committed to investing in this area of our service. So I think we're doing all the right things, and the proof, will be, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, of course. But, the things that we've done so far that I can demonstrate and evidence, I think should give you some confidence that we will improve.
Thank you for that, Julie. If I can
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on the other question that I asked regarding
the I haven't got that.
Would you be able to check, please?
I can check. I could tell you how much we spent in compensation last year, but that's as a whole group. So I can check in terms of the compensation levels for Surrey Heath, definitely. I'll have to come back to you though. I won't be able to check that now.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I remind members that there is a session here on the 20th of June at 6:30. Everybody should have been notified. If you can remember, that is going to be on. Any other questions from members? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Thanks for that. You talked about your new products and the accommodation, your new sort of accommodation you're building, and this may not be one for now, but it may be for another meeting. But what additions or alterations to your standard build are you making to reflect the, if you like, dreadful phrase, climate emergency, in terms of making the buildings more sustainable, your accommodation more sustainable? Thanks.
We're building all of our properties now to EPC levels A, which I think is really, really positive. And that's obviously the highest banding. We haven't yet decided, and I think this is the same with a lot of organisations and the sector as a whole, what's going to replace gas. We are looking at alternatives, and that's the big question at the moment, is what are we all going to do in terms of our heating systems going forward. But all of our new build properties are built to EPC band A. So I can give you that assurance. But I mean, I can get, if it would help at the next meeting, I could ask Sarah Ireland, who's our Executive Director of Development and Growth, to come and talk to you about the specifications and what we're doing on our new build programme in terms of sustainability. I mean, I think I covered last time that we're actually doing a pilot project to retrofit some of our existing properties in Surrey Heath, and the design work's already started on those. I think there's 66 in this area that we're going to be retrofitting to zero carbon, and that work will be complete by March 23. So that's positive, but I can certainly get Sarah to come and do an update if you think that would be helpful.
Thank you for that, Julie. Members, I am going to bring this session to a close because we do have our other guests here tonight. But any other questions, and I see, and Councillor Tapper, you've got your hand up, but if you can ask these questions or anything relevant to that on the 20th, or as I say, you can email Accent for that. Julie, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
And all the information and the questions that you've taken. And we look forward to seeing you on the 6th of September. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Members, we're now turning to agenda item 6, and we welcome the Inspector for Surrey Police, the Commander and Inspector Gemma Taylor. Really pleased to have you with us tonight, Gemma. So I know you've got the slides and they've gone out to us. So if you could speak to your slides, and then we'll take some questions to Gemma. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, everybody. As already mentioned, I'm Gemma Taylor, the new Borough Commander, well, new-ish, new as of February this year, for Surrey Heath, and hopefully you're all aware that I took over from Inspector Alec James back in February, and temporarily that post was filled by Sam White, who's now one of our sergeants. So the first thing I just wanted to run through with you is a little bit about the structure of the team currently and how that works. Now, forgive me if you've run through this before. Obviously, I don't know that, so I just want to make sure that you kind of understand how the team structure works at the minute at Surrey Heath. So we have a neighbourhood policing team, which is at the bottom there in green. They're essentially a response team that will be mainly your first responders to jobs when you call 999 or report things via 101. My team specifically is the specialist neighbourhood team, and that's the structure of the team that I've put in place since arrival in February. So we now have 3 sergeants on the team instead of the 2 that you had before. So you've got John Costell, who's on and off been here for about 20 years. Sam Barwood, who's been here for a good few years now, and Sam White, who I mentioned already, was acting up in my position between Alec and myself. You can see there that they're structured so that they each have responsibility for a geographical area within Surrey Heath, as well as a couple of other portfolios like rural crime and youth engagement. So the core function of the specialist neighbourhood team really is long-term problem solving and managing community impact. So whilst my officers may respond as an initial response to an incident, really they're the ones behind the scenes working with the partners on those long-term problem solving issues. I mentioned that I've done a bit of a restructure since February, so we now have 1 sergeant clearly responsible for each of the geographical areas. They also now line manage the PCSOs and neighbourhood specialist officers, so the police officers that work on our team, who are responsible for policing the communities in those areas. So we've moved away on the neighbourhood team from a system of having quite good coverage. So, for example, you might have had 1 police officer from our team that worked in the town, Frimley, and the villages that worked at the same time. However, they hardly ever would see the rest of their colleagues for that geographical area, which meant problem solving and dealing with long-term issues with partners actually quite difficult. Because when do they get together to discuss how they're going to solve the problem? When do they arrange those partnership meetings for if they're never in at the same time? Our neighbourhood policing team is our response function. They are there 24/7. So you will always get a response, even though you don't always have, for example, your police officer for Frimley working on that day. And obviously within the team, we have the ability to flex amongst those areas. They're not stuck to those geographical boundaries within Surrey Heath. Ultimately, if we need a response from the neighbourhood team, we can send someone. But that really should just make the problem solving a lot easier and a lot better, to be honest. So the SNT, or the Specialist Neighbourhood Team, therefore now operate a 3-shift pattern model covering between the hours of 0600 and 2300, so 6 a.m. to 11 p.m, dependent on the day of the week, every day of the week. So that is the kind of coverage you've got across your Specialist Neighbourhood Team currently. So I also just wanted to talk a little bit about some changes that I'm starting to bring in around priority setting and focus of that team. Now, obviously, there's an incredible amount of demand, which you can all appreciate, and we don't need to dwell on that. And I'm sure you're aware, as we've already discussed with Accent, resources across the board are tight. So it's really important for me and my team that we're clear on how we set our priorities, what those priorities are, how those priorities link in with our force commitments and the police and crime plan, but also how we communicate that to the residents of Surrey Heath and yourselves, so that it's very clear on what the Specialist Neighbourhood Team are working on. And I think perhaps historically we've all been guilty of maybe not being very clear to the public on where our priorities lie with our team and keeping the community updated. So moving forward, that's an ongoing piece of work that I continue to work on. So to explain the slide then, the sergeants now hold a 3-weekly, what we call people, groups and places meeting. And the things on the left-hand side, so our partnership meetings like our CHARM, JAG, SOCJAG, those meetings feed in, as well as those priorities mentioned. And we're trying to be very data-led and managing our priorities through threat, harm and risk. So when I say data-led, we will, as part of our problem-solving methodology, we look at what calls we're getting, how often are we getting them, who are they from, what times of day, what times of week, etc., etc. And there's lots of different data sources that we can get that information from, as well as from our partners as well. So we take all of that into consideration in these people groups and places meetings, which are held between those geographical teams. That then obviously feeds into the teams generating their priorities every 3 weeks. Now, that's not to say they will change every 3 weeks, but as a minimum, that's how often the sergeant will sit down with that whole team and review those priorities, what they've achieved so far, and then what the focus is for the next 3 weeks. It could change, but like I say, these are long-term problems. So actually, you're likely to be discussing the same people groups and places for a good few of those meetings. Again, that doesn't mean to say when something comes up and we need an immediate response to it, we don't wait for the 3 weekly meeting to discuss it. We obviously act on it as and when we need to. As an indication at the moment, some of the current priorities, the topics that we're covering and how these feed into the force commitments and that police and crime plan, some of the areas at the minute include burglary, VAUG, antisocial behaviour, antisocial driving and use of motor vehicles, and local feuds between people. And I will come on to some examples of that shortly, but I just wanted to go through with you an overview of where we are currently from a policing perspective. So this data is taken from the Joint Neighbourhood Survey results. Now, forgive me, because I tried to find out before this meeting exactly how they get this survey done, and I couldn't get the answer in time, but I'm willing to follow up afterwards. So each quarter, the borough commanders get given their Joint Neighbourhood Survey results, and obviously we can see compared to the previous year, compared to the previous quarter. We've just actually had the end of year results for 21-22 come out as of the end of last month. So Surrey Heath at the minute is sitting where it's sitting. So when taking everything into account, how confident are you in your neighbourhood police is the question asked. And 86.8% of those asked said very or fairly confident. This is actually the highest confidence score in Western Division, so Guildford, Woking, Waverley and Surrey Heath. The force result is sitting at 84.4%, so again, it's higher than the force average. In terms of the next question, agreement that police are dealing with crime and ASB issues that matter in this area. Again, 63.2% said they strongly agreed or tended to agree with that. The force result for that question is 61.5%. So again, Surrey Heath are sitting slightly above the force average in that area. To what extent do you agree that the police in your neighbourhood are seen in places and at the times they're needed, strongly agree and tend to agree? 40.8%, which isn't good. However, the force result is 37.2%. So there is some work to do around some of this stuff, and you may have noticed if you follow the Surrey Heath Beat social media page, a bit of a change, hopefully, in some of the comms that put out. I've tried to start moving it away from a lot of crime focus, because I think we can fall into a trap of increasing a fear of crime by constantly talking about it, to getting my officers to post their patrols, where they've been patrolling, tell people, because we're out there and they are doing those foot patrols, but not everyone's always around to see at those times. So let's tell people we've been there and we've been in those places. And hopefully we'll start to increase some of those scores. In relation to the dealing with crime and ASB question, the second one up there, I've also implemented an ASB callback system. So it's a bit of a trial at the minute. I'm using an officer that I've got that's on restricted duties. And we've picked 2 categories of antisocial behaviour because there are 15 actually on our system. So 2 of those, and we'll come on to those again a bit later in the document, where she will actually go through and call back the people who have called us to tell us about antisocial behaviour. Because of threat, harm and risk and the matrices our contact centres use to send officers to jobs on the day, unfortunately ASB isn't always attended and people don't always get the feedback that they need once they've reported it to us. So this is a way of trying to claw back some of that confidence in policing locally, and also get that information that we might be missing by not attending that incident or following up with that reporting person. Just to give you an indication of where we are currently crime trend-wise, so this is obviously figures taken from the 1st of June to the 31st of May and compared to the previous year. So on the left-hand side, you can see total notifiable offences is up by 0.6%. That equates to 30 crimes across the year. Non-domestic abuse, violence-related offences, 8.7%. That equates to 146 crimes. What I will say is that we've also seen an increase in that across the division. So 12% in Guildford, for example, 16% in Woking. Likely to be due to the ending of lockdown, people coming back together and associating again, could be one potential reason. Licensed premises reopening, etc. Hate crime, 13% increase, which equates to 16 crimes. It's the third lowest increase across the division, but we've also doubled our solved crime rate in this area. So whilst we have seen an increase, and again, I could sit here and give you lots of reasons for that. Perhaps it's because people are becoming more aware of hate crime and are reporting it more. Perhaps we're becoming better at flagging it ourselves as a hate crime. But the important thing there to me is the solved outcome rate has doubled compared to last year. So hopefully we're doing something right in that respect. Commercial burglary, 1.6%, that only equates to 1 crime. Theft of motor vehicle, 21%, which is 18 crimes. And I will come on to keyless car thefts, which I think picks up at least 12 of those 18 crimes that I've just spoken about. On the decreasing side, however, lots of good news on the right-hand side. So drug offences actually down 49%, which equates to 140 crimes. Domestic abuse with no injury, 1.7%, which is 7 less than we had last year. And we've had a 42% increase in the solved outcome rate for those that particular crime type, which is 18 cases. So whilst we've had 7 more, we've solved 18 more. And rather than keep going through all the figures, I'll just mention robbery, because that's quite a big one as well. They're down 53%, which is equivalent to 16 crimes in the borough. I'm now going to move on to talk about some of those crime trends on the left-hand side that have increased, so theft of motor vehicle being one of them. So Op Jayhawk is the operation name that we have locally for what is basically a national problem. It's keyless car thefts, predominantly BMW and Mercedes of all different years, but obviously high performance, valuable vehicles that are being stolen. Since the beginning of January to the 20th of May, we had 62 offences across Surrey, 12 of which were in Surrey Heath. Of those 62 offences, 28 BMWs, 31 Mercedes and 2 other vehicles. It's consistently happening overnight in the early hours. There were 11 different offence clusters, and I'll come onto a map in a minute which will show you what I'm talking about there. They're using the M25, sticking to arterial routes off of the M25 and those main roads. It's very difficult to detect the offenders because they're using what we call mission vehicles, so they're constantly changing the vehicles, they're constantly changing the number plates, which is making use of ANPR almost redundant, to be honest with you. And they're deactivating any fitted trackers to the vehicles very quickly. So it's almost one of those crimes where you have to get quite lucky to catch them in the act. So a lot of our plan around this is prevention-based whilst we work on the pursue element in the background. So I mentioned about clusters. So in Surrey Heath in particular, you can see there in the month of April, because actually, touch wood, the last 3 weeks we haven't had any BMW or Mercedes keyless, certainly not that I'm aware of. The 20th to the 21st of April, we had 3 overnight. The 19th to the 10th of May, another 3. 24th to the 25th of April, another 3. So we know that the offending is happening in these clusters, but it is very difficult to predict because they're not using the same days of the week. They're not hitting exactly the same areas every time. Like I say, they're not using the same vehicles, etc. And this is a national problem, not just localised to Surrey and certainly not Surrey Heath. We are working on, I mentioned, a prevention plan, so hopefully you'll have seen some comms go out already around how to prevent this, because really that is the best way at the moment that we can advise people to avoid becoming a victim of keyless car theft. We're looking at longer term communications and a way to identify all owners of BMWs and Mercedes, specifically within those areas that you see on the map to begin with, and then looking wider at the borough to do targeted communications to those people. We're looking at funding around what we call Faraday bags as well. So on this slide you can see, and again, forgive me if you are familiar with keyless car theft. You may have already, I know Alec covered this last year actually, because this is not a new problem. But essentially they use a transmitter, it pings the car's locking system, sends a signal to a second transmitter, which is with someone located near to the house, i.e. near to where the keys are located within the house, and the signal gets relayed back to the car opens and the car starts. The best thing you can do is turn off your keyless entry system on your car, but who wants to spend thousands of pounds on a car that you then have to turn off one of the best functions of, probably. So a Faraday bag, which is something on the top right hand side, is basically a signal blocking signal transmitting blocking device, is to invest in one of those and obviously make sure it's working, because we have had some thefts where keys have been in Faraday bags but they've not been properly in the bags, or the bags are old and have deteriorated. So again, it's that education piece. We're looking at trying to work with our dealerships locally as well. That's obviously a tough sell, because who wants to tell someone when they've again spent thousands of pounds on a new car, actually you need to buy one of these so that your car doesn't get stolen. But like I say, there's an ongoing bit of prevention work around that. I'm also pulling together a group across the force to make sure that our approach to dealing with this crime type is consistent, because we have seen where our contact centre have taken some of the calls in from people, residents reporting these crimes, the crimes getting immediately filed when we may have lines of inquiry. Luckily, my team have picked those up and we've followed up on those lines of inquiry. But there is a risk there that we could miss that opportunity. So I'm pulling that group together at the moment. And also I've established a group with our neighbours in Thames Valley and Hart, who are also experiencing the same. In fact, Thames Valley are experiencing a lot of theft of number plates, and then we're seeing those Hart, a lot of theft of number plates, and we're seeing those number plates then being used on our stolen vehicles. So we're making sure that we're sharing that information and pulling together to really try and get a consistent approach across the board. Just briefly going back then to the joint neighbourhood survey, this is another area. So we've spoken about crime, and I've given you that sort of one example of a crime trend and what we're doing around it at the moment. This area of the survey focuses on antisocial behaviour specifically, which really, as the specialist neighbourhood team, is our bag, if you like. You can see the results there, year end from last year, and then obviously quarter four, which we've just had. Generally, the fairly big issues as determined by Surrey Heath residents have remained the same. And certainly this quarter, obviously, we've got, and year end, speeding motorists, antisocial or inconsiderate parking, antisocial driving. For me, I take that as a fairly positive, because I would be more concerned if I had some of those issues at the bottom of the table further up. However, I'm not naive to the fact that some of those at the bottom of the table have increased. And that's where we're targeting our ASB callbacks to responses to those ASB issues at the bottom of that chart, because those numbers have increased across the year. In terms of the top three that I've just mentioned, one of the things that we're currently working on, so one of our other priorities at the moment, is illegal car meets or antisocial use of vehicles at Watchmore Business Park and along the A331. So again, this was data-led. We started to see an increase in calls about this particular issue. And again, I know it's an issue that before my time was addressed and the problem was not solved. So this time I'm really keen, and my team have the briefing that this time we do it right and we solve it and we don't leave it until it's done. The these heat maps, we call them heat maps, are produced from the data that we had around calls linked as ASB outcome 15, which is antisocial use of vehicles. And you can quite clearly see there's a problem in that area from that data. We've been doing a lot of joint agency and again cross-border work to try and solve this problem once and for all. We interrogated the data to get patterns, so we identified it's mostly Friday, Saturday and Sunday nights between particular hours. So as an immediate response, I put a dispersal order in place for 6 weeks. Importantly, with a dispersal order, it's a toothless tiger unless you staff it. So you have to have staffing to attend that location to enforce a dispersal order. Otherwise, it's just a dispersal order and you hope no one goes there. So we backed that up with staffing, and on the first weekend, we managed the team and have issued, I think now we're up to about 115 community protection warning notices to the owners of those vehicles, and basically sending a shot across the bows. And we've included Lion Way because we noticed that they moved from Watchwell Business Park over to Lion Way as soon as they saw us waiting for them, asking them not to come and be antisocial anywhere in the borough. And if those vehicles come back, obviously we'll follow up with Bob and see through with a community protection notice, which could lead to them ultimately having their vehicle taken away from them, fines, etc. So far, touch wood, of those 115, we've had one vehicle come back, and they were actually caught drug driving on the A331. So we're just looking into whether they were attending a meet and whether we can link that in to escalate to a CPN. Either way, they're now facing a prosecution for drug driving, so a good result. We've had some really good engagement with the business park themselves. They have put up some money to allow electricity to be installed into some of the lampposts there. A local ANPR company who actually supply our ANPR cameras for the police are on Watchwell Business Park, so that was handy. They've offered to donate 2 ANPR cameras, so as soon as the electricity's in, they'll be installed with signage, and then we can use that ANPR data to enforce and continue with our CPW and CPNs. We're also looking at other prevention methods like rumble strips, etc. in that area. This has also gone hand in hand with the Department for Transport noise trial camera system, which currently applications I think have just gone in for. So I contacted Michael Gove and put in an application, or my part of the application essentially, for us to be part of that trial. So there's 4 locations in the country that will get those noise cameras, and essentially they're speed cameras but for noise, is my understanding. So I'm hoping that we'll be successful with that application, and that will assist with us dealing with the issues actually along the A331 itself. So we're trying to tackle the problem from every which angle so that it doesn't come back again. The residents who we're aware of it affecting in this area and their roads have been surveyed with a survey we've designed. So we've got an idea now of how this ASB has been affecting them. And then the plan will be that once we feel we have got to a point that we've solved this problem, we'll resurvey those residents, and then we'll have the statistics to compare to see actually what is the difference in the impact that we've made, so we have a measure of that. And then finally, obviously I couldn't conclude this presentation without mentioning the tragic events of Friday the 27th of May, where 17-year-old Carl Wright lost his life to knife crime in this borough. You'll all know now that the suspect has been charged and remanded in prison until the next court date in July. We're still working very hard regarding this investigation, and whilst I just want to reiterate that incidents like these remain extremely rare, we are putting plans in place regarding prevention work with our youth engagement and antisocial behaviour specialists. Okay, obviously our main aim is to prevent anything like this ever happening again in this borough, or quite frankly any borough in Surrey if we can avoid it. This includes lots of work around contextualisation meetings with Surrey County Council to better understand how our groups of youths and people interact across the borough, as well as across other forced boundaries. Obviously the victim of this offence was from Aldershot. and the offence happened in Camberley. We extended the Opceptor knife amnesty for the foreseeable future, and are continuing to educate regarding changes of legislation around knife crime. Something that's not in this presentation because I'd written it before it happened. Sunday night we had another incident of what I would say is youth violence in Frimley. Again, this just feeds into our ongoing prevention work that we're doing. It's really difficult and challenging to deal with because unfortunately these children, because they are children, will not tell us what's going on. They won't speak to us. We're having to try and work out who's feuding with who and why. So we're doing a lot of analytical work at the moment with our intelligence team, trying to work that out. And just last night alone, we visited 14 residents of Surrey Heath to advise them that they need to not become involved in these situations and what the risks and dangers are around this. Again, I don't want to escalate that fear of crime because, you know, part of our commitments is to work on that feeling of safety, and generally the borough is a very safe borough and those crime trends and stats show that. But we do have a small issue at the minute with some groups of views, and we are going to tackle it and deal with it. So, any questions?
Thank you for that, Gemma. Yes.
Thank you, Inspector Taylor. Firstly, I just want to commend you and your officers at Surrey Heath Police. Especially, I had to report a crime relatively recently committed against myself, and your officers were incredibly diligent and effective. So I just want to pay tribute to you and to them as well. And also thank you for your presentation as well. Very informative. I guess my one question was not really on any of the statistics or anything. It was when you showed the team structure of the 3 sergeants in the 3 areas. The one question I have is, what was the reasoning for putting the rural crime team with town watches in the kind of the most built-up area of the borough instead of the 6 villages? And I'm just kind of wondering.
Yeah, so essentially, I've put that on this presentation just really for your information so you can see which sergeant is responsible for that. That's not to say those 2 teams, because when I say team, rural crime is 1 PCSO currently, who feeds into the Force rural crime team. So that PCSO sits under the line management of John Castell, who happens to line manage those areas. It was a consideration to do it the other way round. However, it basically comes down to team dynamics, that those people work better together under that line management, and the youth will sit better under Sam White because of her particular skill set, and it's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Hawkins, Josephine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have got a couple of things, not that I'm known for being difficult, but occasionally. I'm interested, I believe you said you weren't sure where the figures came from when you're saying about the people are 86.8% confident in your neighbourhood police. I'd be interested, because I don't think anyone's ever asked me, or I've never seen it anywhere, you know, how do you feel about your neighbourhood police? A couple of other things you were saying about carless key theft. I know there is a lot of it about, and I'm part of the neighbourhood watch scheme, so you know I'm sort of aware of that. But I just saw that on one of the it's the Parkside estate last night, which is the estate near the Frimley Park Hospital, that someone sent a video through, just and it was from their door. You know, they've got one of these video doorbell thing, and someone had actually gone round and tried all 3 doors, not for a keyless thing, that just tried car doors to see if they could get into them. So I think there are still people around. But what it does annoy me, that people put it in Facebook and say, you know, watch out for this. And I say, please report it, you know, because you're not looking at Facebook. I think, what is the point of telling other people? And they say, well, this happened at 3:30. I say, just ring up, report it. It doesn't matter what time it is. You need to do it. Another thing which is, you know, is sort of close to our heart for Edward and I, we're borough councillors for Parkside Estate, is Southcote Park. We have had, last year we had a stabbing there in the park, in the children's play area. Someone was doing drugs actually at one of the sort of picnic table things, and it was all sectioned off with forensics and all sorts of things. I believe they did get the person. I'm not sure what happened in the end, but we have seen youngsters going into the park. I've seen youngsters by the roundabout, Ravenswood roundabout, actually, and the underpass, actually dealing in drugs, sort of keeping a watch. I couldn't believe it. I went with my daughter and she said, they're doing drugs, like Mum. I said, no. And there's one keeping a watch out, there's two others at one end, one at the other, and they're doing drugs, and off they go, skipping off into Southcote Park. And I don't know what we can do about it. You know, I need help from the police as to how to solve it or how to deter it, because there doesn't seem to be anything, you know, that we're able to do. We did some years ago, we cut the, with some of the Surrey Heath officers, we cut the undercroft of the trees up, so that because there was drug paraphernalia and beer bottles and all sorts of things, you know, happening there, we got seats moved so everything was more visible, but there were still drugs actually going on there. And as I say, we can't put a light in the corner of the park because there's overhanging pine trees, so it wouldn't matter what you did, it's still a dark area in the corner. But I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on that. And also, seeing police, I don't know, well, apart from when there was stabbing and I went over to speak to the police officers, I don't know when we last saw police officers in Parkside. And I have finally managed, after a lot of nagging, to get a meet the beat thing set up. So, but that just takes months to do, and we haven't had anyone for years. So I'm progressing slowly, but I would appreciate any help that you might give for our residents.
Okay.
Thank you.
I haven't got a pen, so I might forget what you've asked me. But the first point was around the Joint Neighbourhood Survey. I will feed that back to you. My understand, because there's two different surveys that run, and I want to get my information factual, but essentially one of them is when you've reported as a victim of crime, they will phone you back and ask these questions. And I just want to get that right. So once I've got the information on who exactly it is they survey, how many people they survey each quarter, etc., I'll make sure you get that. The second point was around the Ring doorbell footage. Yeah. So very frustrating. I completely agree. I have it myself regularly from Neighbourhood Watch. People will report stuff to them that actually we needed to know about when it happened, not the next day or the next week. It's a message that I've recently reiterated through the Neighbourhood Watch coordinators, and also we have a volunteer called Rob who comes in and sends out regular alerts through In the Know, I've asked him to change. He has a paragraph at the bottom of his alert messages around reporting, so we've reworded that as well to say to people, you know, you really need to report directly to us, because you're absolutely right. We don't have the facility to monitor Facebook. We monitor our own beat page, but I'm not naive to know that obviously not everyone is on that. It would be helpful if more people did follow that, so certainly please feel free to encourage residents to do that. For example, through the keyless car thefts work, I became aware of a closed Facebook group that's run by a resident in the Copt Hall estate. Because I had that information, I was then able to tap into that when the murder happened to get messages put out through it. But I was obviously reliant on the member of public who runs that Facebook page, and actually I only had her contact details because of a complaint about the keyless car thefts.
Well, yes, she is a friend of ours, actually.
Yeah, so it was all, you know, circumstantial. So it's great actually that we were able to make that link. But yes, residents do need to understand that we don't monitor that stuff. And without the information, like I say, we're data-led and we operate on threat, harm and risk. So if the data doesn't support us doing something about the problem, then unfortunately our resources will be put elsewhere where the threat, harm and risk says they need to be. So people do need to report to us, because that's the data that we use to then obviously direct our resources. So anything like that you see, absolutely get them to report. And some of our messaging, you'll see, hopefully I'm updating regularly in the members briefing. I do the Neighbourhood Watch coordinators, I can't think what it's called, Heath Watch, I think it's called. And I'm also trying to get into Heath Scene at the moment, regularly. so that I actually have a voice directly to members of the public. And those are the kind of messages that I can put out directly. But absolutely for all of you to tell residents to report to us, no matter how great or small. They can DM us on Twitter, Facebook, online reporting. I know 101 isn't particularly popular because it can be a little bit painful, but there are other ways to contact us if they don't want to spend a lot of time doing it, and that's really what we need. Was the other point around Southcote Park?
Yes, Southcote Park drug use.
Yeah.
Young people, as I said, we'd had a stabbing there.
Yeah.
And then, which we met with officers there. I'm not sure what happened in the end. I do know that they were looking for a knife in the drains along the Portsmouth Road. I'd seen them there, and I'd gone over. But it was right in the children's play area, right in the entrance. So it wasn't as if it was hiding behind the trees or anything. But there has been I have seen a lot of children of late, and I've seen adults. They pull up in the car park. You see one car parked next to another, and I think, well, it's nothing no I think illicit going, because it's two men. They pass something over enough and they've gone. So it's and I don't know what to do about it. With the lighting, as I say, we've asked for a meet the beat. I've spoken to Rob, and we finally got something, but I'm not sure. If that's going to be the right type of thing, or if you can help and advise on how we might deter people from going there.
So firstly, I'll apologise because I'm not aware of the history of obviously what's gone on in Southcote Park. I think our wider youth violence problem solving may assist with some of that work, because by and large we see that it is similar or the same people attending these locations, and we don't have a specific location problem with those groups, but those groups do travel, so that may help. In terms of location specific, again, I wasn't aware in terms of the data that location was a big problem. One thing you can do is continue to report and encourage more people to report, and the more information around vehicle indexes, descriptions of people, and reporting at the time it's happening will assist. But I appreciate that's probably happened before, and you still feel like you're not seeing the action. Meet the beats, we don't specifically run regular Meet the Beats anymore. We run them where we feel there might be a need. So I'm sorry it's taken so long to get that off the ground. I think that's because we are quite, well, from my point of view, we're quite accessible in lots of other ways. Actually, some people still just want to come and see us face to face to report their problems. So I will feed it back to Rob and his Sergeant Sam. We'll have a look at the data again and see what reports we've got. Please continue to report, get people to continue to report to you. It sounds like it's been discussed with partners before around lighting and things like that to see if there's anything else that can be done. It may be that we need to revisit that because obviously hedges and things grow again. I don't know if they've become overgrown and need to be readdressed. Or a fresh pair of eyes with one of our designing out crime officers who are specifically trained in looking at areas to see what crime prevention measures can be put in would be something also that we could look at. So leave it with me. I'll take it back and discuss with Rob. When is the Meet the Beat? Sorry, I didn't mean... You weren't expecting a question from me. Okay, so I'll have a chat with Rob, and before that then we can look at the data and see what we've got. Okay.
Councillor Deach.
Thank you. So Alec James was a tough act to follow for you, I think. He was a fantastic borough commander. So if you do see him, pass on my thanks to him, because I didn't get a chance to do that myself. But I know your history in that you were a PCSO for in my area, actually, in Mitchett and Deepcut. So I know you're well across all the hyper-local issues that we all face. So I'm really glad that you're in post. Now, Councillor Black and I have been working quite closely with one of your NSO's, PC Landegg, and I've been very impressed with her responsiveness and proactivity in a lot of the local issues that we brought to her. So if you could pass on my thanks to her. One thing I would ask, that's something you might want to try and look at, is some partnership work with the MOD, because I get a lot of comments, and I do the same as Councillor Hawkins in terms of encouraging people to report these issues.
Yeah.
But when they do, and it's on MOD land, what tends to happen is whoever it is that they speak to in the call centre can't deal with it because it's on MOD land. Okay, so I would ask that you do something more proactive to work with the MOD, whether it's the MOD police or the DIO, good luck with that, to get on those training areas, because there's a lot of antisocial behaviour involving motorbikes and mini motorbikes, drug use, lighting fires on a very sensitive heathland. And we're getting into that season now where that could become a major problem. So I would ask you to look at that, please, so that your guys and girls can get onto the training areas. And I know Councillor Bates is on the Zoom call there. I would imagine there are similar issues on Barossa Common behind the old Dean estate, which is also an MOD training area. So please, would you look at that? Antisocial behaviour seems to be low priority, but you and I both know it's high impact on a lot of residents. So I'm pleased to hear about your callback scheme, and I'll be very interested to hear how that progresses. The keyless car theft, I mean, these Faraday pouches cost £8 on Amazon. And perhaps there might be some opportunities with Neighbourhood Watch through the county councillors. Do they offer them out? I'd certainly be willing to offer some funding through my members' community allocation for that from the county council, if that would be of help. But certainly this council can help raise awareness through who you've seen. And you said that you've been trying to get into that. I hope you haven't had to try very hard, and that our officers are cooperative in. And if they're not being, please let us know. Could I finally recommend, that presentation was excellent, and I learned a lot from that. Could I recommend perhaps to the chairman that you come back here at least in 6 months' time to update us? Why not?
But I can send my colleague.
Send someone else then. Send someone else then. Because you've introduced a lot of new measures here, schedules and all that sort of stuff. Be interesting to see how they progress in, and I think 6 months' time is probably a good amount of time to allow all that to embed. So yes, if you could send your replacement, and congratulations.
Thanks. I'm pleased I've just talked myself into some more work there.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sure that'll be fine. Yeah, so I probably should have mentioned at the beginning I'm almost 7 months pregnant. So unfortunately, although you've had me for a short amount of time, I'm going to be off for a year. But I will be coming back, and that's partly why I've tried to put a lot of these structures and things in place before I go, to try and get the team to where I want it to be before, so that it's in safe hands for the next year, and then I'll come back. This is also why I struggled to remember all of the questions in one go. So the point around the MOD land, I know that on Barossa we do regular patrols, and we have that link already. They were up there not that long ago, actually, in the 4x4, because, yeah, we're aware we're coming into the season where it's, you know, fires and things like that. But you're right, I haven't heard of us having that link over at Deep Cut so much, and we did historically have that. So I'll follow that up with Meg, PC Landegg, and see if she has that contact already, and see if we can be a bit more proactive with them. Trying to get the contact centre to change what they say to people when they call is another much bigger problem. But at least locally, if we can share the information, if you get some, or if there's anything that we do see that comes through, then that's a starting point, and we can get those joint patrols happening if they're not already. So I'll take that point away. Faraday bags. We're basically doing the research at the moment to establish how many BMW and Mercedes owners we have in the borough. Yeah, starting with those areas on that map. I've already said we will look at funding to fund a certain amount of Faraday bags. We just need to work out how we're going to do that, whether we do that through Neighbourhood Watch members initially, or whether we open that out wider, whether we work with our dealerships. That's what we're just working on at the moment. And unfortunately, recent events have taken over a little bit. So we're a little bit further behind, about 2 weeks behind on where I would like to have been on that. Touch wood, we've seen a little bit of a drop-off, but it is going to happen again. So it is in hand, and I would love to come knocking on your door for some money when we're ready to say how many we need, basically.
Yeah, I would imagine that the average BMW Mercedes owner can afford £8
Yes.
to buy their own bag, and I suspect
Yes.
that the main issue is raising awareness
Yeah.
rather than the actual funding. But I think that I think we all can help is by helping to spread the word on our social media channels, Heath Scene, whatever it takes. But you certainly have my full support with that.
Yeah, so the article, hopefully you've seen it, I think it went out a week or two ago, the members briefing. Obviously I focused on that. It was a very similar to what I put out in the Neighbourhood Watch Coordinators briefing as well, that goes out. And like I say, my ambition is to have a regular slot with Heath Scene, so that each, I think it's quarter that it goes out, I can have a theme that's relevant, and always have a slot basically in Heath Scene that I know goes to every single resident in the borough.
Good idea.
And that's also how I'm going to get the priorities messaging out there as well through that method. So yeah, spread the word, but also I'm hoping to have that direct link with members of the public as well.
Right. Thanks, Gemma.
Thank you.
Councillor Edward Hawkins, followed by Councillor Tapper.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. In addition to being a fellow Parkside councillor and just on Southcote Park, I think both of us would be very pleased to meet with the crime reduction people on site to see what we can do, because there is the possibility we may have some access to funding. As I look across the table on our SIL funding, we may be able to do something on that. So there may be some funding. I'm also a keyless BMW driver. We won't do, but okay. In addition to being a borough councillor, I'm county councillor for Heatherside, Parkside, Copthall and Wellington Park. And I have had, I'm sorry to say, you'd rather take the wind out of my sails. I'm going to have to go at you on this one because I won't now, because it's unkind of me. But I've had minimal, verging on nil contact. I've had to chase up, I've had to go through other avenues, and I just cannot get hold of any information. And when I have been able to get through, get some information, I get a very terse response back. Other than from Vince, who I know I have an issue with a resident who's not happy with what the county are doing, and Vince went up to see them, and within hours he'd sent through an electronic note of the meeting, which is absolutely brilliant. It's the first time I've had something like that from Vince, but try and track down poor Vince. I mean, he can't be everywhere, he seems to be. But I do feel that as a county councillor, covering quite a large area, that area, thankfully mostly, other than one very sad case, relatively crime-free, I just have no contact with the police. I have access to Facebook pages, I have my own, and there's others I can get on, and I feel that I'm an asset not being used, and I do object to having to chase around to find out the basic information, whether it's a road traffic accident, whether any problems caused by that, which I can feed through to the county. So slightly ungracious of me, I'm afraid, and I apologise for that. But I hope that somebody will pick that up when you go off and have a nice quiet next 12 months, sitting there watching daytime television or whatever you do. But thank you for that.
I think just from my point of view on that, I'd be keen if you can give me any specific examples of where you feel like we're failing you on communication. Is it just general communication that you're talking about? Because we wouldn't normally sort of go out of our way to notify you about things that are happening unless there is a need, and obviously when the murder happened, that's why I tried to get the message out as soon as I could around what had happened with the suspect, and obviously keeping the chatter to a minimum on social media. But we wouldn't, as a matter of course, notify you about everything that happens within the borough or your area, sorry. But it would be good to get an understanding, because everyone's want desire is different when it comes to communication, and the way that people want to communicate is different. So we're obviously not getting that right with you right now, but I think we need to understand that more to be able to deal with it.
Can I just come back in, Jim, and looking at Graham, he may have this one. Classic example was, it took me forever to find out about a road traffic accident at the junction of Maltway and Old Bisley Road. And I was various things about those air ambulance there. And so I can feed that through to in my own route, through to the county highways. And we have regular meetings with the highways. Now, the police may have conversations as well, but to give on that road, the Maltway Road, that particular junction, Paul Morgan, we all know that junction, the speed of the traffic, and I see Graham nodding about that, and the speed that comes through. And that was a classic case where I was going around in circles, and it was a resident from somewhere away that told me about it. And I think it took me 3 weeks to get an answer as what had happened. And all I got back, yes, there was an accident. That was it. And that was the one that annoyed me, I have to say.
Okay. I think you emailed that to me, and I passed that on to one of my sergeants, because obviously capacity-wise there's only so much I can deal with, so unfortunately I entrusted them with that. But we also have to work within information sharing protocols and what information we can and can't share, and I appreciate they may have not shared everything they could have with you, and without looking at the specifics of that, I don't know. But I take your point, and I think moving forwards, perhaps it is a conversation that we can have around how we improve our communication with you specifically, so that we get that right.
Councillor Tapper.
That's all right, don't worry.
Councillor Tapper.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to briefly go back to the issue that Councillor Deitch mentioned about keyless car thefts and the advisability of acquiring, if nothing else, just a metal tin in which to put keys. But obviously a Faraday pouch may be more convenient. I do have one myself, and I can confirm it does work. But even that will not resolve the situation for those victims who we know from social media where they've mentioned that their car has been stolen off of their driveway just the previous night, that they know about Faraday bags. They know that it will protect their cars from being stolen, but they just haven't actually got around to getting hold of one. So in some instances, you have to just say to those victims that you knew the situation, you knew what you could do, you just didn't do it. And hopefully that's a lesson that you've learned, an expensive one, quite probably, but a lesson. There are people who just the message just doesn't seem to get through, and it's nobody's fault of their own. It's just one of those things, unfortunately. Thank you.
I'd like to bring in the officer now who will talk about Heath.
You just mentioned Heath Steen a couple of times, so that's fine. I just wanted to confirm I've sent an email. You'll see that our head of communications is one of my areas, so I think you probably know Kate Novice.
Yeah, I'd just like to say it's not her fault. We're
Oh,
just
no,
still in
we just
talks
need to,
about it.
Yeah, we just need to. So it was more about the fact of I've sent her an email. The questions come up today, so we'll just make sure that we obviously liaise with you and work out how we go forward.
Yes.
Basically, so you can do that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a question now. Yeah, going back to the keyless cars being stolen, a couple of have been stolen on my patch. Obviously, these thieves, which probably are coming from London and elsewhere, it's been happening, well, car thefts, not particularly the keyless. They do come out of London, and they use the, over years, M3, M25, A30, quick getaways. They must be, these thieves must be going around touring our area, sussing out where these cars are. It's a pity that people maybe at home see, I do see them, it sounds like I'm a curtain peeper, doesn't it? But you do see, if you see strange happenings and viewings, they've got to stop and look, haven't they? Do you get anything reported through on that suspecting vehicles?
No, so just on the first point around them sort of coming from London, yes, they probably do, but one of the issues that makes it very complex to solve is that it's not one group doing it, it's multiple groups with multiple demographics. It varies between 2, 3, 5 people in these groups. So that map I showed you, it could be one group responsible for the offences on the 20th to the 21st of April, but a completely different group responsible from the 24th to the 25th. So it's very difficult to predict. They're not all necessarily coming from London. Some of the information suggests that they might be coming from the Reading direction. They seem to go off towards Essex, but it's not consistent every time. And like I say, the switching of the number plates, the deactivating of the tracker makes it very difficult for us to follow them and trace them, because they're very quickly in and out of our area. And that's partly why I'm trying to build up that cross-border relationship, because as soon as they hit the Meadows roundabout, all of a sudden it becomes even more difficult for us to manage, because it shouldn't be that difficult, but it is. And obviously criminals don't respect police force boundaries. They exploit it. I've forgotten what the second point was that you made, sorry. Oh, seeing what happens. Yeah. So another thing around prevention that I want to try and publicise is obviously a lot of these crimes are happening sort of 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and people aren't aware until they wake up and they go to use their car and it's gone, or they notice on the driveway it's gone. So normally there's a 6+ hour lag between us getting the information. Most people in the road are asleep. It's only if something loud happens they get awoken. So one thing I want to look at is encouraging people to keep notifications switched on things like Ring doorbell, so that it might be annoying overnight if the cat walks across your driveway and you get a notification on your phone, but actually that could be your car being stolen. And if we know about it there and then, you will get a deployment to that. And that's going to be our best way of catching people responsible, is going to be, we know when it happens. It's very difficult, because I know I've had suggested to me by residents, just put police officers at the end of the road. It's not that simple. I wish it was, but I've interrogated the data as much as I can to try and get patterns of days of the week when I could put them there, times when I could put them there, roads I could put them in. But it's so hard to predict. If I had some data that indicated some strong days and times, I would do that. But yes, we're definitely going to need residents to support in that way with being the curtain twitcher, to be quite frank. But it's at that sort of 2, 3 o'clock in the morning where most people are not up and about. So yeah, that is going to form part of the prevention messaging, and some of what's gone out already has alluded to that. But yeah, moving forward, we're looking at actually turning Ring doorbell notifications on and things is going to be helpful. Yes.
I put a recommendation to the committee members. I'm looking at item 4 here. The committee is asked to consider the presentation in relation to Surrey Heath and any future steps which members would wish to recommend to the executive and or the council. Do you have any members? Councillor Deach.
Well, just what I said earlier, in that we ask whoever is looking after Gemma's post while she's on maternity leave to come back and present to this committee in 6 months' time to let us know how the new measures are going that Gemma's introduced. Thank you.
Is that noted, members? Thank you. So much for attending tonight and giving us such it's an interesting, and all these details that you've given us here tonight. And wish you well in your pregnancy. And we'll see you again on your return. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we'll now move on to item 7, and this is, excuse me, to receive a verbal update from Councillor Barry White, who's very patient there, Barry, the crime panel member. Thank you.
could you follow 2 presentations like that? I'll be brief because it's getting late. As you all know, I'm the Surrey Heath Borough Council representative on the Police and Crime panel. The panel consists of all 12 local Surrey authorities, which includes the 11 boroughs and the County Council, plus 2 independent members. The independent members are just normal members of the public that have put their name forward to be members of that committee, so anybody is qualified to apply. The panel is there to hold the elected Police and Crime Commissioner to account and will be seen to work in a constructive manner with the post holder with a view to supporting the effective exercise of her functions. We review the draft policies and crime plan given to the panel by the PCC and make a report and recommendations which the PCC must have regard to. We review the PCC's annual report and ask questions, make reports and recommendations at the public meeting, which the PCC must attend. We also scrutinise decisions made or other actions taken by the PCC in connection with the discharge of the PCC's functions. There are 2 subcommittees, Finance and Complaints subcommittees, both of which I am a member of. I think they got me in a weak moment as the newbie, which always happens, as we know, at Council. Over the last year, we've had quite a large agenda at 4 different meetings. At my first meeting, we had a confirmation hearing regarding the election of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. The panel actually recommended that Miss Faisy Thompson was not appointed to be DPCC, but as we are only recommendations are only advisory, the PCC does not have to take our recommendations on board. And that goes with a few other instances, which I won't go into, have also been listened to but not used, if you get my drift. One of the other things that I found out on joining, which Councillor Hawkins might know a little bit more about than me, was the Building the Future. This involved Mount Brown being made redundant and new premises being put into action for the police. This was scrapped, and now Mount Brown is going to be used, and there's going to be alterations and upgrades at Mount Brown. So I don't think I'm talking out of school by saying an awful lot of money was spent on looking into this by the previous PCC, and this PCC decided to not go ahead with those recommendations. We've had 4 meetings plus 2, complaint subcommittees, also finance subcommittees. It's been a learning curve over the last year, and when I took this on, I did ask Councillor Hawkins for a little bit of advice, and basically I think she was right in saying you need to find your own way, you need to deal with things differently, which is what I've been doing. It's still a learning curve. I'm still learning as we go along, but it's a scrutiny committee, and we all know scrutiny committees just make recommendations, and those recommendations do not always have to be adhered to. And that's what I'm finding is happening with this situation. And I'll leave it there because it's getting late.
Thank you very much for that report, in-depth report, Valerie. I'll take any questions to Valerie.
Thank you, Councillor White, and I'm glad. I must admit, I think I was the member for 4 years, and I was never asked to come here, so I'm very grateful for that, so thank you very much. I did go around Mount Brown. I'm not sure if you'd been there, and I thought it was quite a pickly place. It's sort of a bit added here and a bit added there, and sort of, and that's where the police non-emergency number goes there, and I must admit I wasn't incredibly impressed with that, but it was just seemed. But if you get the chance to go, I would go there. But I did find it quite frustrating that it is, you can only make recommendations and that the things that you really want to get your teeth into and would like to change. It's, yeah, I got it in a word. But so if you do get a chance to go there, and I also went on cybercrime, which I think was at Hastings. I can't remember where it was now. And that was really, I think there's some really interesting things that come through the PCC, but it's hard work. So congratulations and well done.
With the Mount Brown thing, we've been trying to schedule a visit for the last 6 months, but with so many committee members and trying to get a date that suits everybody, it's not very helpful at the moment, but I think we're scheduled for the end of this month.
Councillor Morgan-Rise.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Councillor White. It's quite interesting, and I know that we've discussed it before. I can imagine it's incredibly frustrating in the sense of being an elected representative going to, you think when you go to the Police and Crime Carnival that you're going to be able to at least, if you all decide something, that the Police and Crime Commissioner will listen to you. I guess the one question I have is, and it's regarding what you were saying regarding being a scrutiny and advisory committee, is especially around the Police and Crime Commissioner precept on council tax. And I'm not going to get into the politics. I was just wondering, is there something, because obviously I know that the Police and Crime panel supported the increase, but did not support the use where the money was spent. I'm just wondering if the panel, is there kind of an avenue for the panel to explore to have made their objection more known, if that makes any sense? Because obviously a lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people kind of knew that the Police and Crime panel objected to the way that the council tax increase was spent, and they thought that it was going to be spent on hiring police officers or etc. I was wondering if if that's something that could be discussed within the panel, if there's scope for that. And also, I was just having a look on the police and the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner's website, and it looks like there's some out-of-date information. I don't know if that can be passed through you to the Police and Crime Commissioner's staff, especially regarding the use of the budgets. I think it still has a lot of references to David Monroe's budgets, and not the current Commissioner's budget. So it's kind of just information that's a bit out of date, and I just kind of wanted to highlight that as well. But thank you for the work you do on it as well.
I have to say, when the budget was set, there was a very, very long discussion about it, and it was a full meeting. Every member was there, and there was a vote taken on it, obviously, and it was pretty even, but we did agree the budget in the end. It was a very difficult decision because we all got different views, as I said earlier on. And as for putting the result of that, what happened out there, that's down to the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. It's not actually down to us as panel members to advertise what's been decided. So I will put that forward to them as well and ask them to advertise more of the results of what's happened within the panel.
Okay, thank you for that, Valerie. Councillor Rodney Bates.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask about the appointment of Ms. V.C. Thompson, which was referred to as within Councillor White's presentation. I thank her for honesty in terms of the panel's position on that. But, and I do accept it is not her view, or it may have been, or whatever, I don't know, and it is the PCC's view. But let's be clear about this. This was an appointment for somebody who is, by their own admission, had extremely limited experience of policing. And the only reason they got appointed was because they were a Conservative activist who was supporting Ms Townsend for the role. Now, I accept that's nothing to do with the panel, and the panel made their views clear. But can I ask whether the panel now scrutinise the deputy PCC, and in particular the claim that was made by the PCC that the deputy PCC's role would involve 75% time spent with young people? That seems to me a farcical claim, even at that stage. So is that claim now scrutinised as to whether that is accurate? Whether the deputy PCC hasn't in fact done anything of value for their £53,550 a year, and whether the panel can continue to make representations if they so wish regarding that appointment, or indeed any appointment whatsoever for the deputy PCC role, which is entirely discretionary, as I understand.
There has been a deputy PCC before. I think that was with Kevin Hurley. But the gentleman in question was an ex-police officer, so was very experienced. We did scrutinise the deputy PCC, and again, it was split as to whether it was absolutely necessary to have a deputy. The argument was made to us that it was necessary, that she would be very helpful with the young people, and we are due to have another report at the end of this month as to how that position has progressed over the last year. So I can come back to you then and let you know what is discussed at that meeting, if that's okay with you.
Are there any other questions, members, to Valerie? No? Okay. I have to turn again to recommendation 3, that the committee is asked to consider the presentation in relation to Surrey Heath and any future steps which members would wish to recommend to the executive and or the council. Councillor Deach.
Yeah, thank you. I thought that was a very interesting and useful presentation, and I think that perhaps it's something that ought to be a regular feature, whether it's once a year or even once every 2 years. But certainly once a year at the very least, I would say. But I mean, I'm open to what the rest of the committee think. But I think that as Councillor White or any other councillor who's appointed to that role, I think it's only right that we are updated as to what goes on there. So yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Hawkins.
Thank you. I think actually it was at the governance working group, and I think it is in the papers, I can't remember what you call it, that we should have either the PCC here or someone from or our representative from the panel to present at this meeting. And I did mention it, I think it was at the last governance working group, that we hadn't done this and that we should be doing it, which I think, so sorry about that, Valerie. Yes, yeah, lots more often, about once a month actually. So no, I think it's every 6 months. I believe it's every 6 months, but I'm sure Eddie would know about that. So, or one of the officers will know. But it was in the governance working group that we would either have the PCC or someone from the panel here. So thank you for that. Just advice.
That's Morgan Rise.
Thank you. I guess it's kind of agreeing with everyone, but I would actually like to give Councillor White a bit of flexibility in the sense of it may not be required for her to come if there haven't been any meetings and there's nothing really of note to add. So it could just be that we also are able to accept a written report, which is then placed into the agenda. I know Councillor White is a member of the committee, so she's going to be here. But it's rather than having something rigidly in place that she has to attend every 6 months to give a report, if there's just to have a slight bit of flexibility for her.
Yeah, we're just discussing it ourselves. We think annually would be fine, as in line with the police inspector and commander. Is that what recommends? Yes. Thank you. That's right. Thank you ever so much for coming tonight and giving your report and taking the questions. It's been very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Members, we now turn to agenda item 8, and welcome to Russ Hayes, the trustee of Blissey Village Hall, who's going to give us a presentation and take some questions. Very pleased that you're here tonight, Russ. Thank you. And thank you for staying for so long.
Tonight to just give you a very quick update on the Village Hall. Graham Davey, our chairman, is unable to be with us, so I'm here instead. Oh, actually, I've got to do a quick Windows update. That's our new Windows. Thank you very much for the grant you contributed to last time in 2016. So we've managed to put some new windows in. The best bit is they keep the drafts out. I'm going to quickly run over the history of the hall, the facilities and what we offer the community, but mostly look at impact of COVID honours and what happened there, and then what we plan to do for the future and take any questions. So the school, as you probably know, is built back in the 1870s. It's a 150-year-old school. There are actually two schools, two schools in Bisley, and this hall was the chapel for both schools. One school was close to the chapel, the other is now the site of Coldingley Prison. And when the schools closed in 1959, the chapel was handed over to the village as a donation, partly paid for, and became a charitable trust. And we opened in 1962, and then added a second hall in 1982 due to demand. And basically, the charitable trust was set up to provide the community with a facility to allow the village to have a centre to congregate and perform local activities. And basically, we made sure that it was safe and attractive to use. We also look after the money and make sure that the policies that we have also allow the hall to be used safely by the people. And we spent a lot of time doing that quite recently. The facility itself, if you're not aware, we've got a main hall which has a badminton court in it, an old badminton court, so it's a badminton court size plus. We have a Jubilee Hall, which is a little smaller, that's the one that was added in 1982, and then a range of meetings and storage rooms that are in the old caretaker's cottage. And those are quite useful for the people who use the hall to store a lot of their equipment. A lot of gymnastics groups use that for us. A fully equipped kitchen. Thank you very much again for another grant to help restore that when the floor collapsed. And also finally a stage, slightly underused these days, but nevertheless that's there. I mean, we do think that we're probably at the heart of the community. It's used by regular users, and some of those are on the committee, which is very important to us because that allows us to understand what our users need and also to get good feedback from them on any issues with the hall. And so some of those here, shown here, the Women's Institute, Gymnasium, Children's Gym Group and such like. The hall itself is well used. I mean, we have about 70% usage. That's probably pre-COVID. During COVID, that dropped a bit. And the number of users is about 1,500 to 2,000 a month that come through our door. And in total, we have about 20 plus now regular users who use the hall on a regular basis. And the first one there, our community cafe, is something that we, the trustees, have set up. We set up a while ago, and that was basically for people to come and have a coffee and sit down and chat, particularly the elderly in the village. There is nowhere else in Bisley. We don't have a coffee shop in Bisley itself, and they find that quite useful. In fact, that was very useful for COVID because we were able to reach out and just keep in touch with those people and make sure that they were safe and looked after. And that community cafe also allows us to raise funds for the hall itself. And most recently, we've raised funds for a defibrillator that's now kept in the hall for our users. And some of us will be going on a training course next week to find out how to use it. But The other things that we also do are exercise groups, and a great range there, Pilates, a yoga, etc., and also variety of children's activities. And just recently, a sort of a mum and tots group has been introduced, Spring Tots, I think it's called. We have a Spring Box gymnastics group that is in there for children, and a range of other things. Daisy First Aid and Messy Church also use the hall for their activities. And alongside that, the parish council obviously uses, and there are also craft groups that come and now use our hall. The U3A has recently joined us, and also we now do more parties and celebrations than we did before. So those are available for baby showers and christenings that have come along. Our hall is also available. We've been in touch with the local care homes and the school, so they now know they can use us as a place in case they have to close and they urgently need to relocate their residents to somewhere else. So they're aware of that. We've had a bicycle stop for the Halo 250 charity cycle ride. And yesterday we had a Meet the Beat at the hall. So that was very good. A full list of our users is, a full list of users there at the bottom. One of the major things that a subcommittee of the hall does is produce the Bisley Strawberry Fair every year. I mean, this has been going for 20 plus years now. I'm very grateful to Councillor Page, who's provided some seed call money for us to put towards getting the fair underway, because it's a vast amount of effort, and like the Scouts with their bonfire night in Bisley, there's a lot of money that's needed up front to get the event on the go. For the hall, it raises perhaps up to £7,000 a year for major projects. So we typically need several years' worth of money to do that. The roof for the Jubilee Hall took us 6 years of strawberry fairs to do. But actually, it's also a village event. I mean, my kids and we've been along to that event and find it of great use. So 26th of June, if you're not doing anything else, come along and visit us at this strawberry fair. Right, turning to some income and stuff now, talking about COVID, not quite yet, but this is the 2 years in terms of finance before COVID. So on the left, you have tens of thousands of pounds going up, and the colours at the bottom, the blue is regular users, the income from regular users just over 30,000, ad hoc users is the brown, the grey is the strawberry fair and other fundraising events, above that are the grants received, and the top bit are donations. So in 2018, about £55,000 of income, slightly less in 2019, but those are the 2 years immediately prior to COVID. The expenditure in terms of those years, sorry, the bars have moved a bit, the dark bit is our running costs. So those are the utilities, the cost of bits and pieces to just run the hall. And we try and make sure the cost to the users roughly covers the cost of our running costs in the hall. The red bits above that are the costs of major projects. And they don't accrue, they don't match on a year-by-year basis with the previous years, because some projects are multi-year and the money comes in and out at different times. So that's where we were before COVID. About £50,000 of income and about the same amount going out. And then in the COVID years, so 2020, the first one just here, the third column, a greatly reduced income. No ad hoc bookings at all. So we shut on the 23rd of March, and that was it. So with no ad hoc bookings, but some regular bookings were still coming because we opened again during the summer. But the big bar there is the grants. And again, can I just say another thank you to some of the grants we received very quickly, I should add. We were very pleased with the efficiency that came in our direction. And you'll also notice in terms of expenditure, we were continuing doing our projects during that. And there was also donations. Last year, those figures are provisional at the moment. They're not fully audited, but there has been a recovery, both in the regular users and a larger slice of ad hoc bookings now. And again, the grants and others. But the outgoings are smaller. We've now looked at where we spent our money on, because one of the things that came up under COVID is how much money we're spending, where can we save money? And we were able to make some adjustments there. So we think we're recovering from COVID and all is going well with the hall. But in terms of COVID, as I say, 23rd of March, the hall closed, and that was it. We had our first Zoom meeting, because that's the only way we could meet that first week to decide what to do. And the first question was, how long can we hold our breath before we go under? Very much like the rest of the country and other businesses and yourselves, what can we do? Well, the answer to that actually was we could last probably a year at least without dipping into our serious reserves. So we thought we were all right. And then along came the grants that started coming in. The expenditure was massively reduced, so immediately we just started to put in a programme of major works. One advantage of having an empty hall is there are no users around to get in the way, I'm afraid. So it was great. We were able to take out the electrical board, we ripped that out. Major fire safety upgrades were done. And when I say major, there were things that were recommended to us previously, so we were able to do that, again, without the problem of having to work around our hall users. And luckily, we had a volunteer, Michael Wand, who kindly, almost single-handedly painted the entire inside of the hall. I mean, very good news for us. Excellent stuff. And repairs to the roof, and we had to take the chimney down because it was rotten, I'm afraid. So thank you again very much for the grants that we received. They were a great help. Some of the impacts, other impacts, we had the loss of 2 major users. Our playgroup left us just before COVID, and they were still moving out during the COVID years. It wasn't COVID itself, it was competition from the nursery at Bisley School, and they had decided that they needed to close. The other major user, Leanne's dance school, left us. Between the two of them, they were over 50% of our income at that stage. Leanne's case actually was very good because COVID had given her the opportunity to move into her own premises and start up her dance school without having to move all her kit in and out every week. So that was a great success story. And several other smaller users also finished, primarily because people didn't come back. They found other things to do. So there were 1 or 2 others that disappeared. But a bit like a tree crashing down in a forest, new users arrived. I mean, we suddenly found that we'd gone from 9 regular users up to a 22, as I say. So overall, very, very interesting from our perspective in terms of extra income and more work. And that's required us to do improved ways of working. Zoom is brilliant. I mean, for us, we got through a lot more meetings a lot quicker. We were doing Zoom meetings weekly while in COVID when nothing was happening. A large part because there was an awful lot of paper chase to do with policies, health and safety, risk assessments, contacting all our users and making sure when they came back, they had got all that in place and understood what we were going to be doing and need them to do with COVID regulations. So the difference between talking the talk and walking it. But Zoom was great for that. And we've done a major upgrade, revamped our website. One of our trustees was able to improve that dramatically. What keeps us awake at night? Well, the 3 major things is, one is the hall falls apart. The other is that we lose major users or competition from others, or the hall doesn't become attractive to the village. I mean, that's one of the things that worries. And finally, the last one is key skilled personnel in the trustees. The loss of the management committee of the village hall is a real worry. I mean, so we're doing a better programme of refurbishment, looking at the place. I mean, Hagrid's constant vigilance. I mean, I came in here and looked around, and the first thing I was doing was looking for damp, quite frankly. But that's the sort of thing that we're now more interested in. It's a 150-year-old technology we're suffering from, and so there's a lot more work to be done. We do better communications with the village. There's Facebook, but also looking at alternative funding and keeping the hall attractive through refurbishment. One of the issues we've got is the hall floor has damp, and so we've got to do something about that. And finally, the trustees. At the moment, we have a very strong team, but the worry is that we will lose key personnel, and how do we replace them? And also, how do we train them up in time to get them ready to take over? So trying to worry about succession planning. Surrey Community Action, with some of their training and some of their informal stuff, has been very, very good there. So those are the things that really worry us about the hall. Trying to look forwards 5 years or some number of time. Refurbishment of the toilet facilities. I mean, again, this is a bit mundane. Actually, it's the ladies' toilets that need doing, because most of our users are ladies, and ladies care about toilets. So we've done something on that, but not as much as we wanted to, because we had a damp survey done. And strangely enough, it said we've got damp in hall. Well, we already knew that. This one, though, was very good. It actually told us where the damp was and what the issues were and how to sort it out. So we're now getting on to that and trying to sort that out, because until we've got that sorted, we can't do anything about the hall floor. Normally, we would sand it, revarnish it, and make it more attractive and safe for our users, but we can't do that. And luckily, one of the contractors that came in refused to do that, because they said, this looks damp here, you've got a damp patch, and we don't think we could do a good job. And that really alerted us to an issue. So we had the survey done, and now we're worrying about damp and what we're going to do about it. But if we get that sorted out, I mean, basically it's improving the energy efficiency of the hall, the environmental impact, and that leads to the comfort and attractiveness to our users. You saw the new windows we have at the end. In winter, that stops the drafts blowing down the hall. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, the left-hand windows in the hall are the same type of windows, and they let drafts in. During COVID, that's brilliant, because we are a well-ventilated hall without actually opening any doors. The bad news is, comes the winter, it's a real struggle for people, particularly if you're doing exercise groups and you're cold. Then the problem of doing exercise when you're cold is that can also lead to injury. So we're trying to address those, and trying to aspire to, keep the heritage features. What we don't want to do is knock out all the old stuff and put plastic in that's out of place, and recruit new trustees, trying to find the next generation who's going to come along and work with the hall. And that, thank you very much, is a very brief gallop through Bisley Hall.
Excellent, thank you very much, Russ. That was really, really interesting. I'll take questions out. Paul?
Thanks for that, Russ. I'm pretty sure Josephine and I came to the Village Hall when we chaired this committee many years ago, didn't we? And we were, I'm sure Josephine will agree, we were very impressed how well run it was then.
Right.
I'm the council representative on two community centres in my ward of Deepcut and Mitchett.
Yep.
And I have to say the issues and all the things that you've just raised there are almost identical to the two community centres that I'm involved with.
Yeah.
The fact that you said that you got a year's worth of reserves, or you could hold your breath for a year during the COVID thing, is a testament to how well run your community centre is, and I'm sure your community would thank you for that. I won't keep you very long because we're getting on late, but is there anything else? And it sounds like you're getting a lot of support from this council in terms of grant funding, and that came through quickly, which is great. Is there anything else this council can do to help you?
The only thing would be, reserves of volunteer trustees, people who are looking like that around the place. I mean, we're probably unfortunately competing with a lot of other things. So that is where, I mean, we're obviously at the moment seeking around the Bisley area, but we may have to tread wider to sort of find some other individuals.
Well, perhaps that's something that our media and comms people can assist with through Heath Scene or social media, whatever it may be. But Bisley is a very tight-knit community, so I'm pretty sure if you put out a call to action, you're going to reach most people in the village there.
I mean, and we have reached most people, and the problem is, finding the people who are at the right time of life to be able to devote their time and are still compartmentalised.
Deepcut Village Centre having the same problem with trustees, so yeah, I understand.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring Jane Boysold in please.
Yeah, I think if you go to Voluntary Support North Surrey, they'll be able to actually sort of put ads out for volunteers for you. There's no charge for it at all.
Right. Okay.
I'll give you the details for it.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick word, because I'm conscious of the time also. I think when Paul and I came, would it have been Bisley and West End? Was it a joint?
It might well have been.
Yeah,
Might well have
we
been.
came, yes, because I think there were people playing cards and doing all sorts of things when we came, yes. I do remember it well. I was just going to suggest perhaps we could put it with, it's not really a question, but perhaps put it with a recommendation that they could have an article in Heath Scene, which would help promote them, what they do, and perhaps get more support and volunteers and that type of thing. And that, so that people, I mean, you may think that people are aware, but because not everyone's online, you just sort of have your, you know, your membership as it is. But I think because Heath Scene goes to everybody's house, every household, that it might spread the word further. You know, this is what you offer, this is what you can do. Come along, have a look, and join us. And they, you know, it works both ways. It could benefit other residents and yourselves, and also looking for help. Just a thought, we could perhaps put it with a recommendation. It's up to the chair, of course. Thank you.
As Brooks.
Thank you, Russ. That was a very good presentation. It's very useful to hear about how well the hall's being run. You mentioned a defibrillator. Is that internal or is that externally available?
It's internally located at the moment. There is another defibrillator that the parish council has at the pavilion in Bisley, which is externally located.
So there is an external one available. Thank you.
Morgan Rise. Edward.
Thanks, Morgan. Thank you very much indeed. Very, very quickly, very interesting. Seriously envious of what you have there. Like Paul, I'm involved in a community centre. How many trustees are there? Because, can I just ask, I mean, what is your core body of trustees?
At the moment, we have eight trustees.
Wow. That's what I say on that one.
Thank you, Russ. Again, very good presentation. Is a testament to how well the village hall is run. I guess my comment's more kind of to Louise with regards. I think what Russ's presentation has highlighted and what other councillors have said is that our village halls across the borough need assistance, and I think there are important resources. So while I fully support a Heath Scene article, but could we think about more widely in a sense of how can you help your village hall or your community centre? Sorry to take away from Bisley, which I don't want to do, but it's kind of like, is that something we could also look into a Heath Scene article of, do people actually really think about volunteering to run their local village hall? They think about, if they volunteer, they think about volunteering in a charity that helps people more directly. So that might be an idea.
Louise.
I've already written again an email to one of my team, but I think just talking with Jane as well, what we could do is look at a broader editorial around village halls more generally, and as you say, just generally raise awareness and point people in the right direction. So yeah, I will definitely take that on board. I've also noted the date of your Strawberry Fair, and I'll see if I can get that out onto social media as well for you, just so, again, we make sure that we're pushing these community events that are happening.
Russ, thank you for your excellent presentation. Very informative. And it's really good to see you getting more regular groups, I feel. I just get more feel across the country that villages and the community centres and the village halls are being used a lot more now these days, which is great to see, I think. And I see your problem with the trustees. It's the same with school governors. Everybody, I think, is so busy these days. And I was school governor for years locally, but you have got to have the time to be committed in any of these lines that you do, haven't you?
With our village hall, we consciously made a decision, having lost two of our bigger users, and that freed up space to allow more ad hoc bookings. So we now have more parties and celebrations than we used to.
Yes.
going on at the weekends, which is good and bad. It's more work on the trustees, and it's also slightly worrying for the local community around our hall because there could be noise and other things going on. So there is a balancing act there, but we've definitely, as you saw from the graph on ad hoc bookings,
Yes.
Opened up to more users and more
Yes.
people. So,
Yes.
and we've certainly seen that in the number of parties and children's parties we've had. It's been great.
Yes, good. That's really good. Okay. So members, I'm turning now to item 4 of this presentation. Again, the committee is asked to consider the presentation in relation to Surrey Heath and any future steps which members would wish to recommend to the Executive and/or Council. So I think all Louise and Jane have been taking on board what has been said here. Sorry? Oh, I'm coming to that now. I was going by the agenda. Thank you, Russ, on behalf of the committee here.
Thank you.
And officers, for your presentation. It's been really valuable to us, and we'll be following through a lot of these suggestions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is the committee work programme, which you have before us. We're jiggling it about a bit with your approval. We're adding things, actually. So, item 2.3, the committee work programme 22-23, 6th of September. At the moment, we've got Accent Housing, Frimley CCG, Camberley Alzheimer's Cafe, Surrey Search and Rescue. So that's a heavy agenda. 29th of November, we have Accent back again. But voluntary support Surrey Heath, we did have earlier in the year. They usually come once a year. We feel we won't have them in at that point, but we do have Surrey Heath tree wardens in. But alongside that, we are going to suggest that we look at having Heatherside Community Centre in here, the management team, to give us an update on what's happening. And we thought an interesting one would be Harper Asprey with their wildlife. They are a very good lot of people. So that would be 29th of November, and that would balance that nicely. And then we go on to the 28th of February, 2023. It seems such a long while ago. Accent again. We will look to have the Surrey Police update, what we've talked about earlier, a 6-month update there. And Citizens Advice Surrey Heath as well. So that would be the programme that we were looking right the way through to there. Emma.
Can I ask if we've had the Basingstoke Canal in? Can I ask if they could come in? Because I'd like to know a little bit about what they actually do.
Yes, we do have them in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so what we're saying is we'll add it to the list, like we have done from the previous meetings, on other people coming in. And sometimes we do have to rejig anyway. So we'll do that, Emma. I think it is a very interesting presentation from them, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see that you've got Surrey Search and Rescue on here. I think an absolutely brilliant organisation, and I hope they're not called out and can't turn up or something, because that would be a disaster. I wonder if we could consider having Thames Water. We had them when I was chair, and I think Thames Water, there are 2 different water authorities that are in Surrey Heath. I think Thames Water is the one, I'm sure Jane will correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's by the Watchmore Park. I think that's Thames. I think it was Thames Water we had in previously some years ago. Because it's quite interesting because people think they can put what they like down the sink, and actual fact you can't. And I think I'll put hot water after oil or fat or whatever it is. They put, or even egg white, you put eggs down, but you put hot water, and of course the egg white goes solid, and oil goes solid, and everything clogged up. And I know we had an incredible presentation showing you actually what the drains look like. And now, I think since then, I've never put oil down the sink. We always put it in a bottle and take it to the
Right, I missed that one.
No, because I had it in my outro.
Oh, right, okay. I'll have a...
That was really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because they feed into the Sang at Waterside down at your neck of the woods, yes. And the other point I was going to say to you, Chairman, is Harper Asprey, just can we liaison that with the officers? Because I have a conversation with Head of Planning on getting them in on design for wildlife for new estates. And we just need to coordinate that, and whether that's part of a training exercise or a briefing to pack, just wanted to get them in there. Just flag that up, so it's something to think about. Right.
So going back to the Blackwater Valley, we do have them in, but add them? Yeah.
We'll add it for next
We've added it. Okay, yeah. Yes.
It says, just, I know that in the past we've discussed housing associations apart from Accent, and I wonder with the increase of the Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing Association, they seem to be increasing their share of stock in Surrey Heath. So I'm just wondering, I'm not saying that we need to put it on for an upcoming meeting, but it's just more for Jane, if there's a way to kind of, because I know that they have properties in the atrium, they have properties in my ward in the Carla Homes development, so it might be worth reaching out to see if we can speak with them as well.